It's Mary Rose at 1 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesday. If you're watching on Facebook, please go to streamyard.com/Facebook. Give permission to show your name. There, I've said it. Now we can remove the blue banner. I don't feel quite so encroached upon. Hey, gang, we've got a really great topic today. It's the D word, discipline. Discipline. I am really eager to talk with you about this. I don't have to discipline myself to do it because I want to do it. And this is what I want to talk about, because one of the really common reasons that writers come to me and say, my block as a writer, the thing that holds me back, is I just don't have the discipline to do it. I just don't have the discipline. I hear it all the time from writers who are not writing at all. I hear it all the time from writers who are writing semi-consistently. I hear it from writers who are actually quite busy writing, but they don't feel that they're doing it the right way, and that if only they had more discipline, that they could apply themselves in a more effective way. It's just a word we love to bandy about. So I am very eager, with no prompting or discipline at all, to break this word down with you today, to try to figure out if it's really even a thing. Like, is discipline a thing that we need to concern ourselves with? If it's not, why do we use the word so freely to mean so many things? And I have 7 tips. I know we like a good list. I have 7 tips of how to reframe the idea of discipline in a productive way, get to the bottom of what you might mean by it, and basically find more freedom, ease, and enjoyment in your process. Let go of this idea that there's got to be a carrot and a stick involved in everything we do. Does that sound pleasant? I hope it does. Before we get started, let me just say hi to the folks that are here live. Oh, Bridget is here. Glad to be listening live, and I'm glad you're here live too, Bridget. Hillary is here. Absolutely love to see you here, Hillary. Karen is here, finally catching me live. I'm so pleased to see you here, Karen. Erin offers a greeting from a beautiful fall day in New York City. Much appreciated here in Southern California, where the change of the seasons is quiet. It's beautiful, but it's subtle. Anne is also having a great time in crisp and colorful Wisconsin. Nancy's here. Oh, we've got a great gang. I suppose this topic resonated with some of you. So as always, this is a live discussion. If you've got stuff to add, tips to offer your fellow storytellers, ideas about discipline and how it might impact your writing that you want to share in the comments for others to learn from, please don't hesitate. I love it when you participate. Hey, Katie, I see you popping in. And she's in California today. Katie, I never know where you're going to be. You have the frequent flyer award of Path of the Storyteller. So listen, we're going to talk about discipline. And I just want to say, in my introduction, I talked a little bit about how common it is for writers to speak of discipline, as their problem. And I just want to share, that I too, I come to you all as a mentor, but I too am a writer. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mary Rose Wood. I'm an author. I've been a writer for decades. I've written all kinds of things. I've had a long and varied career as a writer, but for the past couple of decades, I've been best known as a writer of middle grade fiction. And I'm also the founder of Path of the Storyteller, which is what this live stream is all about. It's my own platform where I teach and mentor writers just like you. And when I talk about discipline, I don't want to imply for a second that I'm talking about it from the perspective of a professional published author who has solved this. I just want to remind you all that this little dance that all of us do in many aspects of our lives, and we can talk about that too, but I'm going to focus on our writing practice. It's a little dance, right, between what we want to do and the resistance that gets in our way and what we actually find ourselves doing. Like, this is a little merry-go-round that all of us will continue to go around for our entire careers, for our entire lifespans as artists. And I just wanted to start the discussion by acknowledging that and not letting any of you think that I'm implying or that the word discipline implies some kind of character defect that's like an individual problem. It's really not, okay? It's really not. And I hope this talk helps you believe me. If you don't fully believe me, I hope this talk lets you believe me. All right, let's get started. Now, I want to start with something positive, very positive, in fact. My first tip about how to reframe the idea of discipline is to get to know your gas pedal. All right, where am I going with this metaphor? Let me stop and explain. As I said earlier, I don't need discipline to get on here today and talk with you about this topic. I'm really excited to do it. And I think a lot of us consider discipline to be the practice of how do we make ourselves do the things that we don't organically want to do. I think if you look up discipline in the dictionary, it's going to have something to do with that. It's going to have something to do with kind of steering ourselves or others against the tide of their natural desires. Does that make sense? So right away, I want to start with our first tip with trying to reframe this definition by getting to know not the brake, not the thing that stops you. We're going to get to that in a second, but get to know your gas pedal. Get to know the impulses that make you go. What magnetizes you toward a task, toward a direction, toward an activity? Now, this is I'm using this kind of gas pedal metaphor, but this is a very sort of sweeping question that could have very basic answers. What do you like to do? Do you like to eat a cookie? Good. That's a gas pedal. Like, do you like to play pickleball? I do. That's a thing that I don't need a lot of discipline to go do. If someone says, hey, you want to go play? I'm like, I think I got 10 minutes. Let's go. What do you like to do? Do you like to take a walk? Do you like to go outside? Right? What do you really like to do? Do you like to call a friend? Do you like to call one of your kids and for a catch-up call? Like, do you like to knit? There are things in your life, and I really want you to think about them, great or small, that you would never decide that you needed to discipline yourself to do. And what is it about those things that attracts you? And I really want you to just, put it on your little notes right now. I'm going to take some time after this live stream is over, and I'm going to ask myself, what is it that presses the gas pedal for me? What makes me go toward as opposed to like pushes me away? And I'm going to ask you, once you've sort of gotten to know your gas pedal a little bit, and it may have qualities to it. Like this is, I guess, what I want you to dive into. Is it relaxing? Does it get you outdoors? Does it alleviate loneliness? Does it put you in social connection with others, right? Does it get your body moving when maybe your natural or typical daily schedule is very sedentary and so you crave that relief? Does it get you outdoors when your natural daily rhythm might be that you're stuck indoors a lot, right? Just really think about the qualities that the things that kind of light you up have. And then I want you to ask, how many of those qualities can you identify in your writing practice? And if those qualities are not woven into your writing practice, well, no wonder it doesn't feel like it's pressing the gas pedal for you. Is there a way that you can weave in the qualities that light you up into your writing practice? If you get really bogged down with too much solitude, is there a way that you could write in a group? Can you go to a coffee shop and do it? If you really thrive on social connection, is there a way that you could have a couple of writing buddies that you agree once a week to share a little something with, so that you could have a coffee date out of it, have a little clutch where you get together, and it doesn't have to be a critique group. It can just be like, let's get together and share what we wrote, right? If you crave being outdoors and you find yourself stuck inside at times, is there an outdoor spot where you can sit and work, like, really being very practical here, because this is a practical question. I want to get you feeling excited to write. So try to weave in as many elements from your gas pedal themes as you can. So that's my first tip. All right, second tip, an obvious follow-up. Get to know what presses the brake pedal. Now, when it comes to our writing practice, this is a complicated question. It's an important one. And it's such a complicated and personal and important question that some of you who are here know this. Those of you who have some experience with the Path of the Storyteller program know that it's the very first thing we do before we actually dive into our deep exploration of story structure and our deep exploration of writing craft. What do? We look at our forms of resistance. And that's the first lesson out of the gate. Now, I'm an experienced storyteller, so if I put something up front, if this is the first line of our program, what's your resistance? Then that I think it's super important. And this is what I'm talking about. What is it that presses that brake pedal that even as you're trying to get started, you get caught up? Bridget's already sharing something. Ooh, I want to know more about this, Bridget. Bridget, what presses Bridget's brake pedal? Having to make decisions. Oh, okay. Feel free to share more about that, Bridget. I bet a lot of people can relate to it. Having to make decisions. A lot of our resistance expresses itself in various types of procrastination and avoidance behaviors. Right? If we let's use Bridget's, for example, if we have to make a decision and the decision stresses us out in some way. So I'm not even really talking about writing right now. Of course, all of this applies to our writing practice. If we've got to decide between a lot of choices, even the quantity of choices is enough to stress us out into indecision. It's called choice paralysis. There's a name for it, right? This is well documented in behavioral psychology. If we have to make a decision that feels super high stakes with big consequences, whether or not to move, perhaps sometimes we have big decisions like that to make in our lives. And it's just so huge and overwhelming. And we can't see the future, right? We can't predict how it's going to turn out. And so we just get sort of paralyzed in the middle. So making decisions could be one thing. And how does that affect us as writers? Well, we've got to choose a lot of things when we write. We've got to choose what happens next. We've got to choose what words to put on the page. We've got to decide who our main character is, narrow the field of our storytelling down to something manageable for a book, right? We can't keep every conceivable possible plot thread in motion. We've got to choose one character with one mission. It's going to be this book and no other. The book in our minds before we actually start working on it could be any book in a sense. But as soon as we start to write, we're in the land of specifics. We choose one road, which means that there are infinite amount of roads that we're not taking. And so this kind of creative process is just a constant need to make choices. You guys know I often say you're the boss of your book. What's a boss's job? To be the decider. Everyone goes to the boss. What should we do now, boss? What should we do next? This happened. How should we respond? This happened. What should we say? What strategy should we take? What's our priority? How do we manage our time? What's everyone's job? It's the boss's job to decide all this. So if you find yourself overwhelmed with anxiety by being in that role of being the boss of your book, it's going to feel like it totally presses the brake pedal. When you get in touch with it, that's what the job is. It depresses the brake. And so it's not going to be necessarily as conscious, right? As Bridget, right? Here's Bridget sharing all the specifics of it. It's unlimited choices. Who's the hero? What's the mission? What's her personality? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If this is the kind of thing that freezes you up in life, it's going to freeze you up in your writing. So Bridget's got lots of self-awareness about this, but a lot of us might not have that self-awareness. We may just have this vague churning sense of that the minute I sit down to work, I'm going to have to start deciding things. We don't have a good framework for how to make all those decisions. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. And so It's just the brake pedal is getting depressed unconsciously without our deciding, oh, I hate making decisions. Let me go do the laundry instead. I don't want to decide what the mission for my hero is today. Let me go, run errands and go to the grocery store for the third time this week. Like, no, right? It's our unconscious desires are driving the bus in a sense. And it looks like procrastination. And it also looks like, listen up, people, it looks like we're busy. And so one of the things that writers will say is that I'm so busy. I wish I could write. I wish I could find time to write, but I'm too busy. This is the other side of the coin of I don't have the discipline, right? All of these like unconscious, like backing away from the work are fall under this category of get to know what depresses the brake pedal. Because there's stuff that depresses the brake pedal. And if you've done this work in the Path of Storyteller program with me, you know that it's not just I don't like to make decisions. It's not just that. You may not even have that awareness. You may still be running along some kind of tracks of labels that were laid upon you when you were young. You're not creative. It takes genius or even talent to be a writer. You don't deserve to call yourself that. It's a waste of time. You'll never make a living at it. Blah, 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 blah. Like there may be lots of stuff that you don't think about consciously, but that when you even like walk past the laptop on the writing desk and you think, oh boy, maybe I could write for a little bit if I wanted to. The brake pedal is going down without you consciously pressing it. You have to explore this because nobody else can really get to the bottom of it. Nobody else can really get to the bottom of it. I hope that a talk like this one is at least a reminder that you have some exploring to do. You have to kind of be the expert on yourself, know your tendencies, as we say in Path of the Storyteller. You need to get to know, just as you have to get to know what lights you up and magnetizes you toward an activity, you need to know what depresses the brake pedal. Specifically about writing, yes, but also life in general is going to teach you something. If you avoid conflict, who can relate to that? If you're a kind of person that would rather not get even near a situation where you feel that there's going to be conflict, how might that impact your writing, which is all about conflict, right? I mean, there's lots of self-exploration to do. So let me just lay that out. So tip number 1, get to know your gas pedal. Tip number 2, get to know your brake. These will be individual, but I also promise you that when you start to have a community of fellow writers, as all of the folks here live are part of this Path of the Storyteller community of fellow writers, all of you watching the replay are part of the Path of the Storyteller community of fellow writers, you are going to find that you can all nod your heads at agreement and support each other, because a lot of the stuff, yeah, it's individual, but we can all relate to it. It resonates very widely. Karen, I see, is sharing making life decisions. Yes, making big life decisions. It's so easy to just let that alone get your anxiety level to the point where you're willing to do anything, really anything, but actually face the decisions you have to make, And then we start to think about discipline. Like we have to be forced to do the things that we need to do in our lives. We shouldn't feel that way. All right. Number 1, get to know your gas pedal. Number 2, get to know your brake. Very good. We got to release that brake. Now, here's the third tip that I want to get to. Once we're not so busy like accelerating and decelerating and starting and stopping, we realize that most of the stuff that is happening in our daily lives is habitual, right? A lot of it is not like big choice moments of should I do this or should I do that? Or, a lot of it is habitual. And this is true on a very small level, like brushing your teeth. And it's true on a big level, like getting up and going to work every day and committing to doing that for 30 years. Like, that's a pretty big commitment, right? But I think most adults make that commitment to kind of get up and go to work every day and have a career and do what they need to do, or raising a child. It's a habit you commit to. It's got lots of variety of tasks in it, and it does ask us a great deal. It asks us to do a lot of personal growth. Once we make that commitment, it's like a habit. It's not like a surprise every day that we chose to have a kid, and now we've got to continue to raise the kid just like we did yesterday and just like we did tomorrow. We're going to do tomorrow, right? We set ourselves up with these things that are kind of baked into the fabric of our lives, and we get so accustomed to them because we repeat them day after day that they become habitual, and they stop requiring this quality of discipline, or what feels like discipline, this kind of like white knuckling, forcing ourselves to do something against what our natural inclination is. The ease, it just becomes part of it being a habit. If you get up at a certain time, you go to bed at a certain time, you have a certain bedtime routine, maybe you tuck in at a certain time, turn off your phone, read a book, all in favor of that before bedtime. Some of us, get up in the morning. We like to go outside first thing, check the weather, take a few deep breaths. Maybe you have a little yoga practice, a prayer practice, a meditation practice, like whatever you've woven into the fabric of your life that just kind of happens as part of the daily rhythm. Those are your habits. Now, I'm not the first person to say that, your habits basically determine the quality of your life. That's a pretty standard piece of wisdom. But when we create a habit, it doesn't get created like in a day. And yet habits are so important. They do have such a big influence on the quality of our lives and the outcome of our lives, that we do have to sort of choose what habits we want to create. And we certainly, if we can, wake up to it, if we've got bad habits, we got to make hard choices about how to dismantle them. But both creating and dismantling habits does not happen, all in a go. It doesn't happen like a strike of lightning typically. Habits are formed through repetition. And so we have to create them gently. So let me steer this back to writing. If we don't have a writing practice, if we don't have a habit of writing, and that, when I say writing practice, that's what I mean. If we haven't woven our creative writing somehow into the fabric of our days, like brushing teeth, like, checking in with an elderly relative with a phone call, every Wednesday at 4 p.m., like preparing the week's menu and going to the grocery store, whatever it is that we do without really thinking. If writing hasn't become part of that sort of tapestry of habits that are interwoven in our life, we have to make it a habit, because otherwise every time it occurs to us to do, but we're starting from zero, right? We're starting from a dead stop, and that takes like a lot of momentum to get going. So we want to weave it in as a habit, but we want to do it gently. We don't want to do it the way some people like start an exercise program, just as an example. Some people go from, I know that I should exercise because it's good for my health, and right now I don't have a clear way of doing it. So tomorrow I'm going to start. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run 6 miles every day, and then I'm going to go to the gym and lift weights for 3 hours. And that's going to be my daily habit. It's not realistic. It's too big. It's never going to work, right? Like, we know that it's absurd. But people sometimes think about writing this way, that, well, if only I had like 3 or 4 hours a day to write, then I would get started. And I know that to be a real writer, here are my air quotes, you've got to write every day. Now, both of those statements are untrue. You need to create new habits gently. If you can write for 5 minutes, on weekdays, every day on weekdays, and skip weekends, that would be amazing. You may like it, and then as it starts to be a habit, you may find 10 minutes or 15 minutes. As it starts to press your gas pedal, you're not going to have to white knuckle your way into making yourself, through discipline, write more. It's going to just naturally start pressing your gas pedal. You're going to be having so much fun. You're going to see progress. you're going to get invested in your project, it's going to start to depress your gas pedal, right? Especially if you're conscious about making sure that the container for this habit has the things that do like light you up. So that's tip number 3, is to create a new habit about your writing, but do it gently. Just keep it like little bites. What's most important with creating a new habit is repetition. That's how habits become habits. We repeat them. So we don't just say, I'm going to blitz through this weekend. I'm going to try to outline a novel and maybe write the first 30 pages and then put it down for 6 months. That's not really a habit, right? What's going to make it a habit is this commitment to repetition. But even if the repetition is super small, all that matters is that you start to have the repetition. So create new habits, but gently. That's my 3rd tip. 4th tip, as we reframe the idea of discipline being necessary for writers, is to reduce friction. Now, what do I mean by reducing friction? Well, you all know what friction is, right? Friction is when things sort of rub up against each other. Friction in terms of behavior is like, let's say I have made a commitment to go to yoga class, right? That's something I like to do and I'm going to go. But when the time comes to grab my car keys and go to yoga class, I discover that all my yoga clothes are in the wash. I don't have anything to put on. I discovered that there's no gas in the car, so I'd have to stop for gas, and I didn't leave time for it. So now I'm sort of thinking I'm going to be late. I discover that, that I can't find my keys. Like that would be a great one because I haven't put them in the right way. So I've just got, it's serious. It's not like I all of a sudden like break a leg, I'm in a cast, so I can't go to yoga class. It's just a series of small like friction events. I think you all know from your own life experience that a few of these types of minor experiences of friction just kind of rubbing up against my desire to go are enough to make me say what? Oh, forget it. It's too late. I can't get it together. I don't have anything to wear. If I stop for gas, I'm going to be late. I don't even know where my keys are. Look at the time. Forget it. I'll go tomorrow. So that's a clear example, right? You'll understand what I mean by friction. So think about how you can reduce the friction that keeps you away from your writing practice, this habit that you're cultivating. What examples can you think of? Maybe I don't have a place to work. Maybe I haven't found like a good spot where I can be untroubled, even for the 5 or 10 minutes that I want to put aside. Maybe my computer is set up in such a way that the minute I open my word processing document to work on my project, I start to be overwhelmed with notifications from social media. Maybe I've got like things dinging and going off and demanding my attention. Maybe my inbox is just automatically scrolling and trying to distract me, right? You can think of the things that create friction for you, and you can reduce the friction. Right? All of the little things add up. So do what you can to reduce the friction. That's my 4th tip. I'm going to move on to my 5th tip, but I'm also going to bring up Anne's comment in just a minute because we're going to get to that. It's a really great comment and I appreciate it. So, all right. What have we done so far? We got to know our gas pedal. We got to know our brake pedal. We are committed to creating a new writing habit, but gently and with consistency and lots of repetition. We are going to reduce friction. And number 5, we are going to set goals, but they're going to be incremental. And I've broken this out as like a separate tip, but I want to point out to you how much it helps reduce friction. Because one of the things that can create friction when we sit down to work is if we just don't have a plan. We don't really know what we sat down to do. We're just grabbing at the time, right? We're just like, I'm going to go and do some writing. And then I sit down and I'm there. But I don't have a plan for what I'm going to do with this precious 10 or 15 minutes. I didn't set a little incremental goal. I'm basically like, I'm going to write. It's not quite enough, right? Let me bring up Anne's comment. So Anne shares, I found two things really helpful in establishing a habit: learning a sense of story structure so the project has a definite scope, and fun writing prompts, writing a little bit something fun. So Anne is just sort of on point with this tip of small incremental goals. She's saying that learning story structure and using fun writing prompts helps her establish a consistent habit. Why? Because she's reduced the friction. When she sits down, she doesn't have the obstacle of wondering, of sort of squandering the opening of her precious writing time, saying, okay, but now I don't know what to do. She's got two tools at her disposal. One of them is that she's studying story structure. So she has a much more nuanced idea of what her job is when she actually sits down to write. She knows, I'm writing the beginning, I'm writing the middle, I'm writing the end. I'm writing establishing the hero. I'm talking about the hero's unsustainable world at the beginning of the story. I'm thinking about what might actually kick my story into motion by kind of taking what's been unsustainable and making it now urgent, and like kind of a need for a story to begin, right? She's able to break it down because she's acquiring technique. She's studying, and she's also using writing prompts. I want to let me throw this up since we're on the topic of writing prompts. I have a collection of 30 writing prompts that are inspired by story structure. It is a free download. You can find the link in the description below this video, but here's the link as well in case anyone just wants to jot it down. It's www.pathofthestoryteller.com/challenge. These are 30 writing prompts that I created for you to do in order, and they will coach you through writing a story, or I should say brainstorming a story. It's not designed to have you like finish a novel in 30 days, but it is designed to give you 30 prompts that will lead you structurally through the beginning, through the middle, and through the end. So the prompts are kind of like a little sneaky crash course in story structure. I really want you to take advantage of these if you haven't gotten a copy of them. It's just a free PDF. You can download it. It'll give you something to think about. So if you, like Anne, find it beneficial, right, to when you sit down to work, to have like little writing prompts to work on, talk about reducing friction. You can roll up your sleeves and dive right in. You've got something like a little mentor sitting on your shoulder saying, okay, this is what you're going to write about today, even if you only have 10 minutes. So this is a really useful thing. Set some small incremental goals. Reduce friction by giving yourself a little bit of a plan. All right. So that was number 5. Now, number 6 of my 7 tips. Use external accountability if it helps. Notice my caveat there. First of all, what do I mean by external accountability? Oh, it's such a common thing that they say about writers. Like, oh, writers need a deadline. Writers need a deadline. Writers need a deadline. Well, the truth is that most of us will react to a deadline. We react to a deadline because it elevates our stress level, And I think that when we have some kind of crisis moment in our lives and our bodies sort of naturally like elevate stress level to sharpen our thinking, to quicken our reflexes. This is like a built-in survival tool that human beings have. So stress is not a bad thing when we need to feel stress, when we need fight or flight, when we need it in our lives, we get it. The problem is that it is not a daily steady diet that is sustainable. We can't always be using stress to get us through our days. It doesn't feel good. It causes problems, right? And unfortunately, modern life, because stress is so effective at getting our attention and making people take action, and it uses stress a lot. We're manipulated a lot by stress. We're always being told something is urgent. We're always being told the sky is falling. We're always being told it's a crisis. No, today's a crisis. No, today's really a crisis. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. There's just a lot of exploitation of the human capacity to respond with stress and anxiety. And so now we have, an epidemic, if you will, of people feeling stress and anxiety. Young people in particular have my heart about this because I think it's hard enough to be young. Stress and anxiety are troubling at any age, but the young folks today are really, really carrying a big burden of this. So when I say use external accountability if it helps, here's what I mean. I don't mean set yourself up with deadlines that make you cry and stressful, situations that are just going to make you feel unhappy. What I mean is to explore what kind of external accountability might tap your gas pedal. Do you really enjoy sharing your work with others? Not every writer does. Some writers are just shy about it and haven't tried it. So if you think you won't like it, but you haven't actually tried it, I'm wagging my loving finger at you, try it. You might really like it. You might really like when, even if you read a couple of paragraphs to a friend and they go, that's just amazing. That might feel terrific. So you might like sharing your work. You might like just the simple accountability of sharing that you did a little writing. You might like, we do it for children, right? They do their chores. They get a little sticker on the refrigerator calendar. They've got a sticker chart. I mean, these things work. So if there's a way that you can create some external accountability that helps, that feels loving and joyful and presses your gas pedal and is not manipulating you by making you stressed, I am all for it. And I would love, there's so many great comments today, but if anybody's got like joyful forms of external accountability, that's a useful thing to share. You might inspire another writer by sharing what works for you. Obviously, being part of a community is really helpful. When we go through the Path of the Storyteller program together, there's weekly writing prompts and there's it's a small group program. So there's like intimacy and people sharing and reading each other's work. And, for the most part, I think most of the writers find it like a kind of positive form of external accountability, right? It's sharing our work it's part of a writer's job, right? Eventually we're going to share our work. So I do want to encourage you, if you think that sharing your work is like, oh, I could never do that, just contemplate, like, what's the point of your writing? It's not so you can put it in a drawer at the end. I want you to get used to sharing your work. All right. So find some external accountability if it helps. Some people use critique groups for this, right? Because every week or every other week or every month or however interval they choose to gather, that's when they've got to show up and have a couple of pages to share. So that's just an example, but there may be others, there may be others. That was number 6. Number 7 is really kind of important. They're all important, but number 7 is, again, it's a kind of a big life question. I want you to think in terms, not just of today or tomorrow or this week. I want you to think in terms of trajectory. So remember, our goal here is we're trying to replace this idea of discipline. I've got to somehow force myself to do things that I don't want to do, including writing. We're replacing that idea with all these other ideas. And one of them is a focus on trajectory. Now, what do I mean by trajectory? There's that book that was very influential. I don't know if people still read it. I bet they do. The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And it's one of the key sayings of that is to begin with the end in mind. This is an extremely potent little piece of advice. When we talk about trajectory, we're talking about kind of our navigational system in our lives, right? If we continue to do today what we did yesterday, and we sort of continue tomorrow and the day after and the day after, and things sort of stay the way they are. In other words, if we take the course that we're heading, if we're on a course and we stick to it, where are we going to end up? That's our trajectory. And we might not think about this a lot because we're so busy trying to get through the day. We're just in the here and now, and sometimes we're overwhelmed, right? But we're going to end up a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10, 20, 30 years from now, depending on how old you are. We're going to end up somewhere. And it's going to be a result of the course that we set. And small changes, right, in the direction that we're heading today magnify over time. It's kind of like compound interest. If we're flying a plane and we're just like a couple of degrees off and we fly a little bit, or we're a couple of degrees off, but if we fly across the continent, the difference of being a couple of degrees off magnifies over time and distance. So if we are just a couple of degrees off our trajectory now, the odds of us ending up exactly where we'd like to be a year, 5 years, 10 years from now shrink dramatically. We have to course correct. And the only way that we can do that is by not being afraid to think about our trajectory. Now, the idea of making a 6-month plan, a 1-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan is very common in business, right? And I would say that successful companies do have a long-term strategy, even though they have to be responsive in the short term. A business that is only trying to get through the week or is only trying to maximize its profits this quarter is going to end up in trouble. We've all seen this, right? But our lives, are our business. Our writing career may want to be our business. We may think of it as our longed for profession. And so we have to learn to think in, what are my habits today? Not just as the day's habits, but as the trajectory that we're putting ourselves on for longer term outcomes. So if it is not your habit now to think of where you'd like to be in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, maybe it feels overwhelming to think that way. There's a really useful exercise that might feel even more overwhelming to some of you. So let me share it just as for a little shock value. There's a business leader named Donald Miller who writes a lot about how to run a successful business. And one of the things that he asks his students to do is to write their obituary. Now, I don't mean to get all, heavy on you, but I do think that it's not a new idea to him. I mean, this is the kind of thing that Stoic philosophers advised people to do, right? Always to remember that we're all heading to the same destination. And who do we want to be at the end of our lives? What do we want to have accomplished? What would we like to be remembered for? And having a vision of that, Donald Miller calls it the obituary exercise. But if you really sat down to think about what you would have liked to have accomplished, who you'd like to be, what kind of legacy you might want to leave, that's a life examination process. But we can, carve out a piece of that for our writing practice and say, well, what actually am I trying to do here? Would I like to have finished a novel, 5 novels? Would I like to be published? Would I like to improve? Would I like to see my books in bookstores and libraries? Would I like to have readers? Would I like my readers' children to become my readers? Would I like my readers' grandchildren to be my readers after I am no longer here? Like, you can start to have a vision for what you want to accomplish. And once you have that vision, you need to take a little stock of your current trajectory and see whether you're on the right path for that. And if you're not, guess when is the perfect day to correct your course? Today is the best day to do it, right? The sooner you correct your course, the better off you're going to be. So this is not quite the same as discipline, is it? Discipline is, in a sense, kind of top down. We're using whatever we use to beat ourselves up to do the thing we don't want to do. But when you embrace the idea of long-term thinking and contemplate what your trajectory is, it's you choosing. It's not anybody forcing you to do things you don't want to do. It's you choosing. And if it helps you to think of your commitment to future you, who 10 years from now wants to be in a certain place, but present day you, today you, is the only one who can make the choices that are going to help future you be happy with where she is in 10 years. You realize that it's you and you. There's no need for discipline. It's you setting the right course and then pressing the gas pedal so that you get there. You get to go where you want to go. And you have the satisfaction of knowing that you're on the right course and that you are incrementally making progress on this path that you chose. So I hope that is a helpful image, a helpful idea for you. I have one more bonus tip, but I want to look at the comments here. Katie, these are so great. Katie has reflected a little bit on her gas pedal and her brake, right? So exercise, being outdoors, nature, and her family connections are what light her up. Those press the gas pedal for her. Absolutely wonderful things. And what presses the brakes? Drama, conflict, shame, and feeling inadequate. So relatable. It's certainly shame and feeling inadequate definitely press the brake pedal and just kind of drain us of all our energy. But look at the other things that Katie shares that are just energy drains. They siphon the gas out of the tank as when we're surrounded by drama and conflict, and we don't have good boundaries about how to, be loving participants in the lives of the people that we are connected to without getting drained by drama that is not ours to solve. So that's a really great one, Katie. Very insightful. Anne has a great example of how to have some external accountability that feels joyful. She has a writing buddy who is also her niece, and they check in with each other. See, that's fantastic. And that sounds like it's completely stress-free. It gives you like a fun thing to share with your niece. You get to cheer each other on. Very, very nice. And Nancy shares discipline without the guilt. That is exactly right, Nancy. That's exactly right. I'm so glad. It's so beautifully put, as you are always so good at putting things beautifully, Nancy. That's really, really great. Well, I love that. I love that idea because we want to be productive, right? But we don't want to be driven by guilt and anxiety. We want to find the joy in it. We want it to be a beautiful thing. And so here's my little bonus tip. And of course, this goes a little bit without saying because I've touched upon it in the talk, but I did want to also say, that all of the things that I've mentioned today apply to every area of our life. It's not just our writing. We're here to talk about how to apply these ideas to our writing practice, but obviously you're going to maybe think about your whole lives in some of these things are going to be applicable, And so you do have to set your priorities, right? As part of your planning your trajectory. And I hope that all of you remember that your priorities are your health, physically and emotionally and psychologically, your happiness. Like the quality of your life is your priority, right? And that includes your interconnectedness with others. Of course it does. And it also includes a sense of meaning, because this is one of the things that we know that humans crave. We've talked previously more than once on this channel about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a really interesting topic. And if you want to look at it, there is a whole YouTube video that I recorded about that and what it can teach us about human motivation so that we can think about our story structure and our characters' motivations in terms of that. But we're humans. We are the lead characters of our own lives. And so Maslow's hierarchy of needs is something that we can think about as well. The very top of the pyramid is this idea of self-actualization. And I mean, to put it very simply, we all want to end up in our lives feeling like it meant something, that we expressed ourselves fully, that we made space to use our talents, that we we did everything we came here to do, that maybe we're leaving a legacy of kind. We had a positive impact on the world, And this is what self-actualization means. My definition of it might be, in the specifics, the things that might make me feel self-actualized might be different than what would make you feel that. But since we're all gathered here as writers, I just wanted to remind you, that in a world that seems perhaps not always to honor artistic practice as a very central form of self-actualization, that it is. That writing, particularly, writing fiction, telling stories that have meaning, that have the power to move our readers, that have the power to connect us with our readers, but also to connect our readers with each other, right? I just want you to contemplate that the power of storytelling is profound, and that your desire to write is a core impulse towards self-actualization. It has to do with that third act of the hero's journey, as those of you who study story structure know. The third acts are all about self-actualization, so it is definitely part of your life's journey to express your talents, tell your story, leave your legacy. It's not a shameful little hobby. It's not a little thing to do on the side when everything else is ticked off the box. It is the top of the pyramid of feeling satisfied. And so when you plan your trajectory, I just want you to remember that up there with your personal health, happiness, your relationships, your quality of life, everything that makes a good life, don't forget that your artistic practice, your writing practice is part of that as well. It's part of your journey towards self-actualization. It's very meaningful and profound. The satisfaction of fully honoring it will be deep and irreplaceable. And the disappointment of not fully honoring it will, it will be real. It will be real. So please, when you make your trajectory, don't be reluctant to dream big and to make real space in your navigational plan for your life, for your writing practice. Love it. All right. That's what I have for you guys today. What a wonderful group. So many fantastic comments. So many of you here. I'm really, really grateful for your participation today. I hope some of these ideas are of benefit. If you are watching the replay, please leave a comment and let me know what you think. These conversations are so great. I really love learning more about how you're all processing your writing practice, how you're managing it, which of these tips were helpful. Maybe you've got something to add that will be helpful to others. If you're not a subscriber to the YouTube channel, please subscribe. I would love it if this content was a benefit. Give it a thumbs up. And if you are looking for those free downloadable writing prompts that will help you have some incremental goals when you actually sit down to work, just remember that you can download them here at www.pathofthestoryteller.com/challenge. I would love for you to have them, use them, and let me know what you think of them. All right, my storytellers, we've had a lot to think about today. I hope this was a benefit to you, and I very much look forward to seeing you next time. If there's a topic you want me to talk about it, let me know. I love to hear your suggestions for future live streams. It's really helpful. All right, I'll see you next time. And in the meanwhile, happy writing.